The Federal Reserve does not have enough money in its insurance program to insure the deposits. So what do? Do they let them collapse and people lose their money? Or does the Fed step in and start printing? If they start printing, it's a signal to everyone else that we're going into hyperinflation.
Here at Liberty in Finance, we're licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. We are standing by the inventory, ready to make sure you get what you need, even into the wee hours of night and on weekends, because preparedness doesn't stop. Call us 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty in Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Bob Moriarty from 321gold.com, 321energy.com, Marine, Naval, Aviator, and financial author. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'd like to say it's a pleasure, but I'm not sure that would really be accurate. We've got some interesting things to talk about.
It definitely is an interesting day. We're seeing the stock for First Republic Bank plunge. The investments the bank has made are very much underwater right now. I think $100 billion of deposits were withdrawn. So it seems like it's just another bank in the line of banks that have been having issues over the last month and a half or so. Your take on where we stand right now?
Well, it's just latest snowflake in the avalanche. But it doesn't make any difference. It's not the snowflake that's important. It's the avalanche that's important. This is not the first, and it absolutely is not the last. This is going to put fear in hundreds of banks and millions of people with deposits in those banks. For First Republic to have lost $100 billion in deposits in a month, I've never heard of anything like that. And here's where it gets interesting. The Federal Reserve does not have enough money in its insurance program to insure the deposits. So what do? Do they let them collapse and people lose their money? Or does the Fed step in and start printing? If they start printing, it's a signal to everyone else that we're going into hyperinflation.
If this bank collapses, this would be bigger than Silicon Valley Bank. It's the 13th largest bank in the U.S. right now. Where do you see us going from here? You mentioned how this is just one snowflake to fall, but as it pertains to this bank, it seems like other banks are reluctant to take over the bank because it has so many losses on its balance sheet. What do you anticipate happening with this particular bank?
Well, the interesting thing is that other banks put up $30 billion in the hopes of stopping the collapse. But when you lose $100 billion in deposits in a month, basically you're stiffed. First Republic is not going to exist on Monday. Okay, the government will come out tomorrow and close them. So here's the issue. Every bank is in exactly the same position as First Republic. Their assets are loans, and they haven't lost money on the loans, okay? They've lost money on the bonds, the U.S. government bonds, and the bonds of other banks. And everybody's in exactly the same position. So what happens to them is identical to what happened to the last four and the next 500.
And I know we saw major issues in the markets after the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. What do you anticipate if First Republic does go under by this next week? What do you anticipate happening in the markets there?
Same thing. Okay, literally, and I think we've talked about this before. If you remember, going back to the 15th or 16th century when they were printing maps and they didn't know what lay to the south or the north, that say, beware dragons here lie. We're in a predicament that no one has ever been in before. It's the biggest financial collapse in history. It's a slow motion avalanche, but do not be confused. It is an avalanche. It will continue and it will get worse. So you could see bizarre movements across the board. Let me give you some numbers. I was talking to you about on the 25th of April, First Republic was $16, and then they lost 50% yesterday, and they lost another 20% today. So they've gone from $16 to $5.42 in 2 days. And it's strange enough, I mean, there's nothing unique about them. They're like all the other banks out there. They're just in deep, serious trouble. This all goes back to the debt problem and the refusal of the government to understand the issue. We had the opportunity in 2008 to let the system collapse so we could start all over again. And they chose to bail out the people who had created the problem in the first place, which was the bankers and the hedge funds. 9 million Americans lost their homes. Now, I think quite bluntly, that's absolutely obscene. I think it was stupid. I said it was stupid at the same time. So now we're going to see what the Fed does. And I'll tell you what they'll do. They'll bail out the bank. Okay. They'll print a bunch of money. We'll have runaway inflation. Stock market will go crazy. Gold will go down $100, and then it'll go up $200. We're at Never Never Land. We're in a place the world has never been before. It's worse than 2008, and it's worse than 1929.
And you mentioned how the solution here is probably just going to be creating more currency. I mean, you look at the Fed's balance sheet ever since the Silicon Valley Bank went under, just in a couple of days, you wiped out months and months of quantitative tightening, right, where they were reducing the balance sheet there. So it sounds like what we're headed into, at least in your opinion, is much worse inflation going forward from here.
Yes. Here's the deal. It's sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, most people make things way too complicated. And if you will ask the right question, you have a chance of coming up with the right answer. Now then, if you have a debt problem and the world has a debt problem, how do you solve it? By going deeper into debt.
You don't solve it. That doesn't solve anything.
Well, actually, it does. Okay. When Silicon Valley Bank went under, they had $18 billion in uninsured liabilities. $13.5 billion of that total was held by 10 billionaires. So they bailed them out. Now, why are we bailing out billionaires? I mean, what is this that's so confusing? How do you solve a problem by bailing out the guys who knew what the terms were certainly the most sophisticated investors? Why are we bailing them out? How is anything any better off? We have to get rid of the debt. The only way you can get rid of the debt is start writing it off, saying, okay, that $18 billion you had yesterday, it's gone.
No, we do have a viewer's question with respect to that. I know we talked about this last time, how there has to be a debt jubilee. That's really the only actual solution. We'll see if that actually happens or not, but that's the best solution in your mind to this debt problem. We have a viewer, Nick, who's wanting to know, that, a lot of the guests on this channel talk about the debt-based system and how it is a failing system, but they don't come up with a solution. You've come up, obviously, with the debt jubilee solution. He's wanting to know what would be a good alternative system for us to move into, and how would it operate differently, and how would the expansion of the system work differently? What kind of alternative is there to the debt-based system?
Here's the issue. You can go back to Babylonian times, and any time you have compound interest, which is what you always have, you have increasing debt, but not necessarily an increased economy. So there have been hundreds or thousands of debt problems in the past. And in the Near East, in Babylonian times, they would have a jubilee periodically, and they would write off the debts. They didn't want the farmers thrown off their land, and they didn't want the people thrown into slavery. Now, Michael Hudson has done 2 excellent books. I highly suggest people take a look on the Amazon for Michael Hudson and read, because he talks about pre-Rome and pre-Greece, and then Rome and Greece. I'm working on a book right now that I think, quite bluntly, is a very important book, because nobody's talking about jubilees. We have to write the debt off. The debt is not going to be paid. Now, when Greece and Rome collapsed because of their debt crisis, there was 1,000 years of serfdom and slavery and constant wars and civil wars and revolutions because they wouldn't write off the debt. The rich stayed rich, but the poor got poorer. If that happens again, you're going to see chaos like you've never dreamed before.
Now, we have a viewer's question on the same line of thinking here about what the new system is going to look like. Jane is wanting to know what happens to private banks during conversion to central bank digital currencies.
The private banks will be erased. Governments want control. And when I say governments, it's really the oligarchy. It's the 1/10 of 1%. I mean, nobody thinks Joe Biden is running this country. He is told what to do and what to say, and the bankers go to him and say, okay, you got to bail us out. He doesn't have to bail them out. And you cannot solve a debt problem by going further into debt. So the private banks will pretty much disappear, okay? Literally, right now, there is no bank that I trust because the FDIC insurance has been wiped out, and the banking system still has all the problems they had before. If those idiots in Washington had any sense whatsoever, they would start writing off the debt. And they'd tell the guys at Silicon Valley Bank with their $18 billion, hey, remember that $18 billion you had yesterday? Well, you could take it off your balance sheet because it doesn't exist anymore. So here's what's interesting. I don't know what the solution is. I think we should have a jubilee, but I can't define exactly how we write the debt off. I mean, the $31.4 trillion the U.S. owes, do we just erase it? Do we erase the $187 trillion in unfunded liabilities of the government? Do we say, okay, no more Social Security, no more Medicare, no more Medicaid? I don't know. But I know it's something we need to be discussing, and it's very important. And we're in for a really interesting 2 or 3 days. Something's going to happen tomorrow. The Fed had an emergency meeting yesterday, and they've already decided what was going to happen. And I think at 4:05 tomorrow afternoon, they're going to say, oh, by the way, we just discovered that First Republic had some problems, so we shut them down.
David wants to know, with all the issues in the financial system, how do we educate our friends and family about it?
Here's the key. In 1928 and 1929, the biggest investors in the world, that would be Bernard Baruch and Joseph Kennedy and the guys like that, they knew something bad was going to happen. Where could the ordinary guy on the street go to for accurate information?
Probably not very many places.
None. Zero. What's he going to do? Go read a newspaper? The newspaper wasn't about to say, oh, by the way, the stock market's going to crash in a couple of months. The government lied before the crash, during the crash, and after the crash, and the average guy had no access to information. Now then, we have more information available at our fingertips today than at any point in history. And it is incumbent on everyone who wants to protect their fortune, their family, their country, to actually do some research on their own. And there's lots of good sites and lots of people who are offering suggestions. And people are going to have to learn how to think, okay? If you want to be a sheep, you're going to get sheared.
I think part of it does obviously come to the individual, as you mentioned. It's important to do your own research on all of this and take responsibility for your financial lives. We have a viewer wanting to do just that, kind of asking this question here. Curtis wants to know, should I convert my 401k to a gold IRA and start acquiring physical gold and silver? Also, should I pull a vast majority of cash from my bank accounts? And obviously, a lot of people are asking this question because of what is happening in the banks right now.
Okay, I can't answer that question because I'm not qualified. However, what I can say is if I had a 401k and I could convert it to a gold IRA and buy physical gold and silver, rest assured that is exactly what I would do. And if I had a lot of cash in a bank, I would try to figure out where I could move it, where it would be relatively safe. And the key here is everybody is going to lose something. It doesn't make any difference how prepared you are, you're going to lose something. Most people are going to lose everything. The fact that he's smart enough to ask the question means that he's asking the right question. If you ask the right question, a lot of times you come up with the right answer.
Aaron is wanting to know what you think the purchasing power of precious metals, specifically silver, will be during this collapse.
That's a really good question. If you go back to 1922 and 1923, at the peak of hyperinflation in Germany and Austria, a U.S. $5 gold piece or a British sovereign, both of which are about a quarter of an ounce, would buy you a night's apartment in Berlin. A $1 bill would pay for a meal for 10 people, and you would get change back. What people need to think about is the least bad alternative. Gold and silver, physical gold and silver, are an insurance policy against financial chaos. I've said that for years and years and years. I will not change that. Now, if you buy gold and silver, you can have an insurance policy on a financial system that is burning down. That's a pretty good deal.
And I know in a recent article, you mentioned that it's important to hold something tangible. And it's not just physical precious metals that have some reality behind them, right? It also can be resource stocks. Your perspective on some ways that people might be able to diversify into other real assets.
There's lots of ways, but the real key here is to understand there's two kinds of assets. There's paper assets and there's real assets. Paper assets are T-bills, T-bonds, bank stocks, the Dow, the S&P, all of whom are about to crash like they've never crashed before. And everything else has some reality to it. I separate gold and silver into two categories. I do not buy gold and silver to make a profit. I buy gold and silver because I want an insurance policy against the financial chaos I've seen coming for a lot of years. On the other hand, I do have surplus capital, and I do invest in resource companies. And from a mathematical point of view, the resource stocks today are the cheapest against the Dow and the S&P than ever been in history. So I think they are safer. I'm not going to say that you're going to make money on every one of them. You won't. But they're certainly safer than the Dow and the S&P and ETFs. There's going to be a lot of chaos. This is not a time to get cute. It is not a time to be investing in scams like Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin is going to disappear. There's no way central banks are going to allow private money to compete with their central bank digital currencies. Now, I believe that central bank digital currencies will fail. Okay, they haven't thought that through. If people don't trust fiat money now and don't trust banks now, and don't trust the Fed, and if you trust the Fed right now, you lost your flipping mind. Okay, why would you invest in a central bank digital currency? They may try to force you into it, but if they do, there'll be a revolution.
Now we have two questions to end, which are probably the most serious questions here. Tell us a chicken story, Bob. And the second one is it a good time to buy chickens?
Well, it depends. I had chicken for dinner, and Fax was nice enough to help me out the chicken bones. I got one chicken, a white chicken, lovely chicken. Her predecessor literally disappeared. And I actually went back to the store and I asked the young lady, remember that white chicken you sold me? And she said, yeah, I do. And I said, did she happen to come back here? I mean, did she escape and I didn't notice? And she said, I don't think so. And she had about 15 or 20 white chickens. And I looked at the chickens and I swear they all looked like the chicken that escaped. But I only had one, and she had like 20. So I bought another chicken. And unfortunately, you have to teach chickens where to sleep at night. If they sleep in their pen, they're going to wake up the next morning. If they don't sleep in their pen, they're going to get eaten. And my white chicken thinks she sleeps in the barn. So I'll go in the barn every night. It's getting dark here now. I'm going to go out here shortly, and I'm going to pick her up, and she's going to peck at me because she doesn't like me picking her up, and I'm going to carry her to the pen. I'm going to talk to her all the way and say, okay, baby, here's how it works. You either sleep in there or you get eaten. And she's ignored me every night for the last 2 months, but I'm hoping she gets it soon.
Fantastic. Well, Bob, we always appreciate your time. This has been kind of a last-minute interview. We had actually scheduled this for Friday, but with things moving so fast with the First Republic Bank, we were like, we have to do it today. So thank you so much for making room in your schedule here. Where can our viewers find you online, and any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers?
They could find me, obviously, on 321 Gold and 321 Energy, or alternatively, they can go to Amazon. And I've got about a dozen books, and I'm going to tell you, I don't care what people read, there will be something that will be of interest to them. And frankly, I happen to be a pretty good writer and a very funny writer. So I would highly encourage going to Amazon. I've made as many books as I could, 99 cents in electronic format, and my statement always is, if you can't afford that, you probably shouldn't be investing.
Fantastic. Once again, Bob, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
Thank you. Good questions. I always enjoy doing interviews with you.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.